Hey there, New Day Blessings. I'm Denise Ann Sumbry, your host, and welcome to another episode of the Maven Podcast. I'm excited to introduce my next guest. She is a bilingual, queer, body-liberated, registered dietitian, licensed nutritionist, certified lactation counselor, and founder of Honest Health and Wellness, providing inclusive, individualized nutrition, healthcare, and specializing in serving diverse populations, including LGBTQIA+, BIPOC communities, neurodivergent individuals, fat folks, and healthcare workers. She works primarily with those with eating disorders or patterns, prenatal, mental health, nutrition, women, and pediatric nutritional health. She completed her bachelor's degree at Dominican University and her master's degree in dietetic internship at Loyola University, Chicago. She is a first-generation Latina, born in La Paz, Bolivia, grew up in Chicago, and currently resides right here in Cleveland with her two dogs, Zen and Estella. She is passionate about decolonizing healthcare and being part of the disability, Latinx, Native, BIPOC, queer, and fat rights movement. When she's not fighting for social justice, you'll catch her traveling, trying new food places, gardening, boxing, or dancing. And if she wasn't in the field of healthcare, she would be a stand-up comedian. The one, the only, Andrea Hinojosa. Welcome to the Maven Podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And the bio, I was like, oh, snap.
And it is like, it's funny enough, it's like our 1 week anniversary.
Yeah.
Because we just literally met a week ago.
We did.
And I have to speak on just how a fan I am with synchronicities for me, because I actually went into a local boutique called You See Me Styles and was talking with one of the owners there, Chi. We were having a lovely conversation. I was actually talking about the podcast when we were there, and your beautiful light just walked through the door, and I'm like, you probably couldn't even distinguish if I was a customer or a worker. I was like, hi, welcome,
Yeah.
And then the vibe was just so beautiful. Like all three of us like really connected and learned a lot about each other in that short period of time.
Yeah, I love how you are describing it like that, because in my version, I was like furious. I'm mad. I'm coming into this place. I'm like, let me just look at clothes. Maybe I'll buy something. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm asked like, hey, and then I'm like, oh, hey, you know what? I'm mad. Can I talk? Like, and then we talked, and then you turned around like, wait, let's connect. This is something. So yeah, I appreciate that, because I just remember coming in with like just such rage, right? And then being able to talk to y'all was definitely a beautiful experience.
And that's amazing, because like that wasn't even noticeable on the external when you walked in. And so that just kind of tells a lot of, how much we can hold within, and other people can't even notice or don't notice. But then when you step into an environment that is welcoming and you have two other, what I'll say, light beings, and just energetically transmuting that so quickly, I think that's really beautiful as well.
Yeah. And definitely I plan to go back. I love that place, the styling and everything. And so, yeah, I am so glad, and I appreciate you having me here.
Thank you.
Having a conversation on our 1 week anniversary.
1 week anniversary.
Special. It's like her thing.
It does. So I know that you have been in Cleveland for about 2 years now. Can you share a little bit more of what brought you to Cleveland and why?
Yeah. Okay. Let's dig deep. The whole why. So my partner got a job out here. And I remember being like, okay, is this going to be a long-term thing or not? Regardless, I was kind of like, my business is going to stay in Chicago. It's going to be too complicated. I don't want to deal with things. I don't want to deal with having to get licensure here, all of that. But regardless, I came out here still to visit and see how it is. The second I took a foot here, though, I was like, holy shit, everyone's so nice. Like, very nice, to the point and here, like, no filter, just being real. Like, I remember being at a restaurant, and I was like, this white person's so nice to me. Like awkwardly, it's very nice. oh my God, this other waiter is so nice to me too. Oh my God, did I just get a free drink? What is going on with Cleveland? And right away I thought of that scene in 30 Rock where, she's walking by and everyone is saying like, you can be a model, you can do this. And I'm like, I am feeling that. I am feeling the Tina. Like, I am like, okay, this is so nice. And at the same time, that's, I recognize the parks are nice here. Like, honestly, if you've never been to Cleveland, you have to check out the Metro Park.
For sure.
I definitely downloaded that app and was like, I'm going to get all my little badges. Like a little Girl Scout out here, but it is true. But then at the same time, it was like, okay, I'm getting all this beauty in here. And I just felt like this is a great place. Like, this is a great place to live. Everyone's connected. It's so easy to just get help. Like, I walked into a coffee shop. All of them, our favorite is Let Go here. And it was nice that the staff, there's a line and everyone, I'm like, oh shit, I don't want to hold up the line, right? No, everyone from the line is going around and being like, where are you planning to live? Let me tell you where to live. Let me tell you this. Let me tell you the history of the east side and west side. I'm like, oh, are you sure? Like, don't you have to go to work? Don't worry about it. I'll tell my boss that you were in it. Like, we're good. Now I was like, wow, okay, this place is so nice. And when there's a community, you just feel welcome. So off of that, I'm like, I'll think about it. Maybe we should stay here longer. But then, like, we went out at night and I just saw all these things, like the opposite side of stuff, right? Like I met a drag queen out here. It was just literally the random stranger where I'm not going to lie to you. I was like, ooh, I feel like this person I can talk to and resonate. Let me ask them what's going on. They're like, oh, there was cops out here. The story's happening. My partner comes home, is telling me what's happening at the hospital. And all I could think is like, wait, what? Well, no shit. Like, come on, Andrea, you should know there's going to be racism, discrimination everywhere. Okay, it is what it is. But then I looked at my own field and I thought, where are the brown and black dietitians out here? And then I thought, okay, I see some. And so to anyone watching this being like, bitch, I'm right here. Like, I see it. But when I came here, I didn't see anybody. And I'm like, where is this? Like, let's look at Cleveland. There is a good amount of black population here, brown population, a lot of undocumentation here that still is present. And yet, like, we are not hearing the stories. And yet I am hearing stories of certain attendings at parties being almost glorifying that they're, they have a maid that's super cheap. But the reason they can afford to pay her at a cheap labor is because she's undocumented, right? I'm meeting folks who only speak some English and majority Spanish. Are telling me in Spanish, like, no, let me tell you how it really is here. I'm meeting this random man at 9 who practices as a drag queen who's telling me, no, let me tell you how it is here and the stuff that's still not connected and why we're still fighting. And then I think of my own field and I'm like, yeah, even when I think of body liberation, every dietitian, every person who's coming to me nutrition, it's like weight loss. You got to be this. There's this perfectionist side that's coming up. And I just thought like, okay, if I brought my business here, if I stayed here, could I be helping? Because at the same time, this place is so beautiful, right? Like there's so much here. I get it. I resemble it. Like I want to help and I want to connect. So I did get my licensure out here. I started connecting with people in the community. And sometimes just randomly, I'm not going to lie, kind of how we met. Yeah, like, sure. Just a random, like, hey, what are you ordering? Like, oh, dude, I just want some chicken. Where do I get some chicken tonight? Like, I just want food tonight. Everyone closes so early sometimes here. I'm like,
that wasn't always the case. COVID definitely shifted the hours of operation for a lot of businesses.
But you could at least talk to people, right?
Yes, and for sure.
So it did bring a lot of changes and a lot of work. And since being here, I've enjoyed each moment. I've met a lot of people, and even taking my corgi, that's kind of how I met people too. She'll just bump into someone and I'll be like, oh, she's a therapy dog. And it's like awkward thing because when you say that, most people go like, yes, oh yeah, I am anxious. Thank you. And I'm like, oh shit, I didn't know to talk about that, Right. But it happens. And that's, I think Cleveland is beautiful and I see the need that we're still growing. There's still progress. And as a Latina queer woman, I just kind of felt like I had to, as someone who is also Indigenous, just felt like, yes, this place speaks volumes. Like, let's do something.
Yeah, and I love, first of all, I'm so appreciative, and I hear that a lot, but the welcoming, like you felt welcomed as it relates to coming and just the exploration, and Cleveland does have that reputation for just being a very friendly city. But what I also love is that through your work, you also get to see the other side of that. And I'm curious to know, like, what, related to your work, what disparities or disadvantages have you recognized right here in Cleveland?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I work in body liberation, right? And we could talk about what body liberation is too. And
yeah, we're definitely going to get to that.
Okay, cool. Let's not jump the bullet then here, right? But there's so much. Like, for starters, I like to walk, and I like the idea that this area you can just easily walk and everything. But the grocery store, I thought about that. Like, as a dietitian, you do kind of just pick up those things. Like, if I didn't have a car, like if I really didn't have a car, if I really didn't have the time, and I had 2 jobs, come home late, where would I get food? Like,
or the money to do Instacart online, because that has a surcharge to it. It's a convenience, but it's an extra expense.
Right. So certain things like that just start popping up where I'm like, we talk about food deserts, and some like a lot of food desert because it's a 5-minute drive, or there's a place here. Sure, absolutely, totally valid. But you know what? Most individuals are not making 100K or up. Most individuals, even if they are, might still be struggling. Like, if we really think about what that is. And at the end of the day, if we have 2 jobs, we do need something open late. Lucky's tends to be open late, but Lucky's, if I didn't have a car, is not that, like, it's pretty far. And then I'm going to have to carry those things. So I think that part came up for me. I think the idea also of just fitness and health, because I'm in the health field, sure. And my partner's in the health field. We interact, we go to parties. And even the staff and the team, I can tell there's still like a lot of fat phobia. Mm-hmm. There's still like a lot of misinterpretation of nutrition. Very common. It happens, but it's one of those things where I'm like, yes, this is true. And just recently we went to Target, and there was someone doing samples, and my partner was like, please don't out there. Like, please don't start talking to someone for like, I really got to go. Like, I only have 15 minutes and I got to go to work. And I'm like, I know, but she's saying it. That's not true, though. And they're like, well, just ignore it. Take the sample and let's go. And I was like, okay, I will do that. And then like an hour later, I'm still with her being like, did you know this? And she was like telling me the opiate crisis here. And I was like, true. But did you also, like, we're talking. And it was just that. Sometimes it's just the awareness. Like, did we have access to these resources? Because she just didn't know. She just didn't know what she should know. So that brought in another thing that I saw here in Cleveland, like, where are the resources? Because there are resources. Like, the UH University has a center that was focused on Black men and getting Black men to go to the doctor. They can get a haircut. They can play pool. They can do all these things in that center. And I was like, oh, this is super, super cool. And yet our neighbor was like, oh, I never heard of that.
Right.
I'm like, well, in fairness, it's new. And they're like, still.
What location is it? Where's it located?
UH.
The one downtown?
Yeah. Or maybe Hinojosa.
Okay, so that's more.
Yeah. Yeah, but they have, like, my point is, like, if you didn't have access or insurance, a lot of these hospitals out here do have programs, do have ways to help, right? Like, we even have a coroner clinic here by Metro. But when I asked the community, like, just the people around me from just walking, they're like, oh, I had no idea. I didn't know that clinic did that. Oh, I didn't know I could see the doctor for that low of a rate. I'm like, okay.
Where do you feel we can close the gap on information being accessible to people, even in the community that's nearby these resources?
Yeah, I think if we think about who's not getting the information, right, we start to notice it's those who are undocumented. It's the Black and brown folks. It's all these marginalized communities, our fat folks. The woman who's like not able to breathe in her apartment that lives like 3 blocks away from me, doesn't know what to do, doesn't know her legal rights, doesn't know where to go, right? And so if we recognize, okay, it's all these marginalized identities that are not getting that info, well, how do most groups actually communicate? A lot of us, it is our community, it's our network, word of mouth, like this podcast, right? Like what we're doing here, someone might be listening and be like, wait, rewind. She said there's a doctor where? Like, write this shit down. Let's call blah, blah, blah. let's tell so-and-so he needs to go to the doctor. I didn't know this, right? Like, it is sometimes word of mouth, and it's also acknowledging like, okay, so we should be asking. We should be being in those spaces. And if we think about, and Chicago's done this, I know Cleveland's done this, it could be as simple as going to the place me and you met and just having a space and say like, hey, we'll cut hair here, we'll have a doctor come in, right? Having those resources. And I know Cleveland is working on it. It really, really is. And it's going to take time, but it also takes time acknowledging who are we not hitting. If we have that mom that has 2 jobs and has kids, like, you could throw a bunch of flyers at her. You can host an event. She might not have time. So then eventually it's a system issue, right? Like, should the community be sending out a mail? Should we be providing this? Should it be as open as it is? And I think it is a work in progress, but in the nutrition field, there's just not a lot of us, and it's so much work. So I think it'll take time, but it really goes back to how each individual receives information and where are we chilling, where are we at, and like hitting those areas rather than fearing to go there, rather than like be like, well, I think they need this. Like, just ask.
True.
Like, ask that mom that lives 3 blocks away. Ask like my neighbor, like, why aren't you going? And I did ask, and I remember most people do have really good reasoning. Like, I just don't have time. I have a kid. I like, this job doesn't
not a priority.
And there's all these things. And sometimes, yes, it is a system issue and it sucks. But then it's like, who's going to the town hall meetings then? Are we thinking about these? Like, can we have someone speak for us? And so part of that was my reasoning to be like, okay, well, nutritionally wise, you can't solve the world. But I know that if it's just one client, that I'm like, hey, let me tell you actually do not need to lose weight. And actually, let's redefine what health is for you and actually recognize that you are healthy. And it sounds like that doctor just doesn't understand your story. And hey, I know you don't want to go to the doctor, but it makes sense. You faced medical trauma, or you saw your mom that was mistreated at the doctor. Of course you don't want to go. You're not going to want to go to a place where people don't treat you well, or don't understand you, or are not going to respect you. So if it just takes that one person to be like, hey, I'll listen, then cool, right?
You mentioned Chicago, and I'm actually curious in terms of access to support and understanding the food and nutritional landscape. How does Cleveland compare to Chicago? Are we one and the same?
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious.
You know what? I think it depends, because Chicago's divided, right? Like, MLK at one point said Chicago is more segregated than the South, right? Like, Chicago has a lot of racism. So, and to the point that I remember having a conversation with a partner, being like, I don't know, I think Cleveland might be better at this. I think that we just need more Black doctors here. We need more, like, we need people not to leave Cleveland. We need people to stay, right? Like, but because Chicago, like, it just, depending where you live, you definitely see it. And yes, we are actively working on it. So something I know in Chicago, they'll have little fridge in different areas in the community, and they have pantries. Certain places they took rid of it, but there's a voucher. I was part of a program where eventually you can go to the doctor, and the doctor can give you this little slip with a prescription. It's a nutrition RX thing, and you could take that to a food pantry. You could take that to a place, and they would give you free food, like 3 fresh produce box, because they acknowledge that when we think of health, this would help you.
Yes.
Like, yes, we know most people, when they know what a protein is. And if they don't know, they know, like, yeah, I should eat that carrot. I should eat this. Like,
right.
They know. It's either the access of it or not knowing how to approach it in a way that makes it authentic to themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Not taking out that identity piece to food, because for a lot of us, it's more than that. So I think there are some programs in Chicago where we're really, really addressing those things. And then in Cleveland, acknowledging, like, I don't think we have that issue. And I'm like, yes, we do. Have you not been in this one spot? And that's when I've met a lot of people here who sometimes are temporary. Like, I think Cleveland is a very big medical, like, you see a lot of people come here.
Flow in and flow out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they'll be like, I don't think they say Cleveland's like very dangerous, just as bad as Chicago, but I don't think it's that bad. I'm like, well, where have you been living? Like, that's a privilege. Like, I can acknowledge that where I live in Cleveland is a privilege, right? And I know that if I lived somewhere else, I probably would not have walked here to talk to you. I
love that.
Right? Like, that wouldn't have happened, and I would have different struggles. And just by the way I look, I might already have even more struggles. And someone else who, when we think of colorism, is probably going to even deal with worse with just that. So those things, I think Chicago and Cleveland both have it. How much it's talked about, I think, varies. In Chicago, it really, zip code matters. And I remember talking to someone here in Cleveland and said, yeah, here too, actually. And it's not just like zip code, actually. It also depends what street you're on, too. Because one street could be great, but the next street's not.
Yes,
like,
that's very true.
So you could be in an area, and that area is okay because you're in that one block. And she's like, yep.
Yes.
And I'm like, huh. No, in Chicago, as you're going down North Avenue, you just see the change. Like, you just visually can tell the difference. We can say like, oh, you are definitely in the Polish area. You are in the Latino area.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the area. Like, you see it. And in Cleveland, many communities are like, oh, no. It's not that. Like,
it can be a very stark difference.
Yeah.
My nephew Joshua recently visited, and he drove from Hartford, Connecticut, and as he drove in, he's like, is this a new development? Is this area like gentrified? Because he was like, the block around the corner looks completely different. I said, it's aggressively being developed or what have you. I would love to now really take a deep dive into body liberation. Can you share what body liberation is, and maybe even a little bit more with your personal journey with it?
Yeah. I think body liberation is going to look different for everybody, and where it lands you might look different. And for some, it's just that exploration to having body acceptance. And for others, I think it's just having autonomy of your body. Yes. And sometimes just like the word body liberation, you're liberated from something, right? Like, maybe like, let's not add these rules and restrictions. Let's just go with the flow. Let's see an experience. Because I will say we live in a society that's very capitalist. It's very like, do. We got to do this. And I always get clients who come to me, and I'll relate this to my personal, and I promise, who are just like, tell me what to do. Like, I just don't know what I'm supposed to do. And the truth is, I'm like, bro, you're doing everything. like I see you, I hear you. And sometimes they need to hear that too. Like, I really do see you. I see that you did this, you tried doing this, and you're still feeling stuck. And a lot of us are, because that's kind of what comes from capitalism too. Like, it's this hustle, this grind, like you got to do. And for me personally, that resonates even deeper, because I do think in a lot of Black, brown communities, we're also just told that at a young age, like, you are going to have to hustle. You want to make it in life, you want to do anything, you got to work, you got to have work mindset. I don't know who you think you are. You're going to go to college, or I don't know who you think
money don't grow on trees.
Right? Like, we get different conversations. We get the sense as a kid, like, we need to be on our shit. And as an immigrant, like, with parents who I've always said, if I become a billionaire, like, or even close to a millionaire, I will find a producer, someone, and tell them in detail my parents' story, because it could be like a whole movie and a whole other story. And I'll share it on the podcast too.
Sure.
But it's that what they went through, and then me coming here, be like a first generation. They don't know anything. Like, Spanish was my first language, and just trying to navigate the system. It almost put what a lot of us first generation immigrants, or even just a lot of marginalized identities and individuals who live here, to feel like, I have to have it together. I have to have perfection. I have to do this right, or fuck, my mom's expecting this out of me, and society's expecting this out of me. And heck, just for existing for who I am, I'm already having these like certain stereotypes, these certain expectations, these certain things about myself and my health, right? That's all going to affect your health if we think about what health is. So for me growing up, I did have perfectionism for sure. I also always had this sense of feeling behind. And then on top of that, just the stereotypes that go to what it means to be a Latina, and what the body expectations of a Latina. So my body, like, there was a point where I was like, I don't want no abs. Like, I don't want that. I want a little bit of gut. I need a little bit of curves. I need to keep it. But there was also a point where I was like, I do not like having this big ass and thighs. Like, I'm getting mistreated, but I'm also getting these looks, right? Like, so growing up for myself, I know that was hard, like not acknowledging, oh shit, I don't think I have the right body. And then also being told sometimes and being based off my body. So I remember just growing up and teachers automatically assuming that I must be dumb or don't know something, or even being redirected like, hey, this is the AP class. I think you meant to go here. And, here I am dressed with, my hair all scrunched up and like my big hoops. I got my Nikes on. I got my sweats and shit. And then I'm looking at the teacher, like, excuse me. And they're like, oh, I think you're in the wrong class. I'm like, this is where I'm at. And I sit down and they're like, what? And then it's like constant, like, okay, I need to do better. And then maybe I shouldn't show so much. Maybe I shouldn't do this. So I think that it really affected how I viewed my body. But it also acknowledged like, oh my God, wait a minute. If I just show a little bit of boobs, this one like male teacher is going to start like maybe giving me some respect. Okay, I see the pattern here. I get this. So I did feel growing up, I was always behind. I was always assumed to not belong. And I always had to prove myself. And anytime I like did do well, it was this shock, like I remember being on this speech like team and I remember my speech coach would constantly be like, you're not pronouncing the D's. And I would just internally be like, I'm Latina. I don't know what to tell you. So I eventually just tell people like, I'm Latina. And people are like, wow, your English is so good. Like they're not even listening to what I'm saying anymore. So I'm like, okay. Right. So things like that affected me. And how does that relate to, I guess, bodies? Because then again, just like I had these expectations, my body started to also go through changes to the point where I'm like, oh my God, even the own people in my own community are like, oh, well, you're not pretty because this guy only likes you because your body's like this. And so me constantly being like, do I not have the right body? Am I not doing this correctly? Am I unhealthy? I don't understand what's happening to me. So I did have like a lot of chronic pain. Now I officially like have chronic pain. I have my own medical side, but I always blamed like, is there something wrong with my body then with this? Like, is this not it? Because that was the thing I would get. And for me personally, because of my medical condition, my body would just fluctuate a lot. So I noticed if I was thinner or perceived thinner, right? All of a sudden, I'm treated with respect. All of a sudden, I'm like, hey, you do look smart. And I'm like, whoa. So now fat does not just equal ugly, but fat also is equivalent to smartness. Right? Like, or like dumbness, really, right? Mm-hmm. So then whenever I gained weight, all of a sudden I was not just seen as like ugly, quote unquote, but I was also seen as like, no, you're smart. And it was just this weird connection that I realized I put in my brain of like, holy shit, for a woman, body, how we present ourselves, it really, really fucking matters. Mm-hmm. And if you're brown or black, it even matters even more now because of how we're seen. I might not come off as professional if I'm not like dressed in a certain way, or if my hair is not in a certain way, or if I'm not talking in a certain way. I mean, even till now, I should have holded like a fidget toy here, but I use my hands a lot to move. Mm-hmm. I kid you not. I remember doing presentations, and when you're doing public speaking at such a young age, you get critiques, and I felt like I could never run away from that. Like, I would get critiques like, you're using your hands too much. It looks like you're throwing gang signs. And I'm like, wow, okay. All the way to, girl, maybe if you lose a little bit more weight and then present it, I'm like, what does like losing weight have to do with what I'm saying? Or what, like my words matter? And when I was much younger, like more like 10 to 12, I did acting and stuff. And I remember they were saying, oh my God, you have such a beautiful face and skin. Okay, but you cannot gain more weight because you're just at the perfect size. Hopefully you get taller. Clearly I never did. But like, they're like, and your hips are at the max they can be. So hopefully like make sure your hips don't grow. I'm like, how the fuck am I supposed to control that? Right? Okay. And then I remember when I was in Las Vegas and I was at like acting modeling thing, this high, big, I guess, fancy modeling person came in and was giving us like advice, right? Like if you wanted to go big, and they contracted different stuff. I don't know the fashion world like that. I just remember thinking like, oh, this is the person that will get me to Paris if I want to go. Okay, cool. But his advice to me was go in front of a mirror, get completely naked, jump up and down, and whatever moves, lose it. And I just remember thinking, okay, hey, that's all I have to do. He was like, yeah, everything else you got. And I was like, okay. What if I don't want to do Molly anymore, just acting? Because I kind of like that side too. And I,
for sure.
You know, and then he was like, same idea. I go up to a mirror and I was like, okay. And I just remember leaving that room thinking, holy shit, I'm ugly. I'm fat. And like, this is not okay. And recognizing in that moment, all these directors, all these people are looking at the white, quote unquote, skinny, tall, blonde woman. And I'm like, okay, I see what they're looking for. And then when they look for someone else, it was very clear. We're looking for like the Black sassy woman. We're looking for the Latina with the sexy figure. And that's when I realized, oh, that's my role. If I went into acting in this business, that's my role. And I didn't give up. I still did some acting in Chicago, performed a little bit. But I also was automatically, just because I'm Latina, like I was in an audition and it took, I got a call back and went to the call back. And it took until the second callback before the director recognized, like, oh, wait, no, there is a sex scene involved. And I was like, I'm under than 18. Like, what did you expect? And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. It's just, you seem like you're just, you know, just matured. Like, just have that figure that would look good on camera. And I was like, is that why I got a call back? Because of my body? And I was like, did you not hear my voice? I was pretty good. I was getting that accent pretty on. Like, I thought I was just doing well in the accent. And he was like, no, I mean, you are a good actress. And I was just like, no, I can't. It's illegal regardless. And I just like left and thought, like, again, so all these bits, right? I know I'm going at you here, but it's all these bits that made me connect to body in a different way, of not just looks and how I'm treated and expectations, but it connected to this other thing that I was feeling behind, of always feeling like I had to have it together, have to have it perfect. You know, I was calling banks at the age of 7, 10, helping things, like constantly being the thing that a lot of us do in marginalized identities, where our community, we're expected, it's almost an expectation. We need to be there for the family. We need to do this. And as the oldest Boliviana, like, you have to do this. And I remember as a kid just being like, yeah, that's just expectation. My dad would not be okay if I got a B in class. Like Latinos invented math, you need to get an A, right? So all of that just bundled in. And I was trying so hard to be like, how do I get ahead? How do I make sure I can make sure my parents can retire and not worry no more? Like, how can I do this for them? And it became about them versus me. It became about perfectionism. It became this idea that as a Latina woman, I recognized how much body really impacts just how people saw me. And why then, when I got sick, and I started getting sick as I got older, people would then say like, okay, well, now you need to lose weight. And I'd be like, wait, what do you mean? And then and then it was to this point that I recognized, like, so now fatness and body relates to how we're treated in relationship to race, in relationship to like just our expectations, whether we're smart, beautiful, we can be famous, be unique, whatever, but it's also now related to health. And I just kept thinking, could this be true? So when I went to school, I knew I wanted to go into healthcare for sure. And I knew I loved business and everything, but I loved money, I won't lie, but I just kind of felt like, no. So I always still got involved in economics and all these like things that people are like, why? And I was like, I like it. I really do enjoy politics. I don't know if I would ever run, because I don't know. What if the corruption could get to me? I was nervous. I was like, no. Like, I might be that girl that says, okay, what if I give you $1 million? What would you do for me? So that's what ended up making me go into the field of nutrition. And that's when I was able to find another lie, that weight does not define your health, right? Like, another thing that we're being told, and all these marginalized identities are being told this, and it's not true.
And the one thing that I'm picking up with your story, which is very, very rich, and I thank you for sharing that at that personal level. And I'm even just taking a moment of my own reflection. So for me, I also notice, like, I'm 42 right now, so I'll be 43 in December. And I know as getting older, like, zero fucks, right? Like, just really releasing. And I recall having a heavy focus in, especially like late 20s to 30s, and then you're adding on societal standards, right? Which you mentioned, where there's always this heavy focus. Like, I did all the diets, did all the exercise, my weight ebbed and flowed up and down. And that's a whole nother discussion. With body liberation, I'm curious, where are we getting to the youth sooner than later as it relates to, like, feeding them this information to almost, I would say, like, get ahead of these conditions and biases, and because it starts at an early age, as you mentioned. Is there any movement as it relates to getting to the youth as it relates to body liberation?
Yeah, I think there is. And a lot of times when I see it, I do see it in more white communities, right? Mm-hmm. And my goal is, just like many other dietitians that I know, and other, like my own partner who has their own identities, and a lot of other doctors I know, we're trying, right? But it also takes, like, us going to the system, right? And acknowledging that there's something here in our system that's still not acknowledging us. And I mean everything in us. And I think, I shared a bunch of, like, mini kind of, like, areas here, but it's why there's a point where it's like, what is our policy to do? Which is why with general elections coming up, I'm just like, okay, this will be interesting, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes there was huge, but maybe not done in the right way. Like, when we think of, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to be like, oh, shit, she's about to talk shit about this. But Michelle Obama, when she came in, she did do a whole MOVE program, if you remember.
I do.
Right? And I would say it had right intentions. And at the same time, like, I think you missed the point, right? Because now we're just putting this emphasis on weight. She was very big in 1 in 3 children are overweight and are going to happen and get this and this. We got to work on this now. And I'm like, is that it? Or is it the fact that, like, this kid, because of this, is now going to feel like that something's wrong with them, right? Now it goes back to that internal thing. And it just takes that one seed to be planted. Back in, and, we had most people might not know this, but, like, there was that presidential test, that 1 mile run a lot of folks had to do, or the swim lab.
Yeah, I do recall. Yeah, I recall that.
But what was the point of that?
Yeah.
Like, what was the point of that? Like, we got to be like, oh yeah, Hannah runs faster than me, but it really didn't do much. So now we are seeing some stuff happening. Mm-hmm. And my big thing in politics is acknowledging, like, who's doing it though, and in what spaces. Mm-hmm. Is it charter schools? Is it the public schools, mm-hmm. right? Are we looking at private here versus public? Is it only the white community space? And I do feel that Cleveland is growing a bit on that. Like, anytime I've met anyone, it's very open. Like, yes, bring your corgi, Stella, the therapy dog, to our school. We would love that, and come in and talk. So I think that's cool about Cleveland, that the community is willing.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They just literally need to be told, like, come. And so that tells me that Cleveland, when we think of politics here, the mayor, our town, even the county, Ohio could definitely be the state that makes the ripple effect. It really can, if you really think about the actual people in this community, right? Ohio's always been seen as this red state, and when I came here in Cleveland, people told me, like, don't worry. A lot of times us Clevelanders will say, like, oh, we're not from Ohio, we're from Cleveland. And I heard that saying a lot, and I was like, what does that mean? But then I caught it. I was like, yes, but actually my brother lives in Ohio, and he faces, like, a lot of racism and stuff, and that's a whole other thing when we think about a person of color who's also a male, right? Or even the term person of color. But I do think Cleveland, Ohio, y'all don't have that much politics and gossip and shit happening like Chicago does. Chicago, there's just, I feel like it's a house where it's like, maybe we're just gonna have to crash this and have a whole new staff. Like, that's how I feel sometimes. Versus Cleveland, I'm like, I don't think we need to knock down this house. I think this house is good. The foundation's good. I think the people within the system, if you really talk to them, they care. I literally was able to call 911, the local number, to be like, this is weird. I've never called this number. I'm not the person that calls. But I was like, am I okay to park here? The lady talked to me and told me every street. As soon as she found I was new to Cleveland.
Was that 211?
Yeah, probably. And
yes.
So
that's a great resource.
Where I'm like, wow. That I had to tell my partner, I was like, I called the local like police number because I didn't know where to park. And then they were like, why would you do that? Who calls the cops? And I'm like, no, but listen. Like, she cared.
Yeah.
And I was just being authentic. I was even talking my way, everything. And she gave me all the 411.
Yeah.
And my partner was like, what? I'm like, yeah.
And shout out to, I don't know if this is the line that you call, but it sounds like it is. And it's not necessarily a police line, but it's 211. Shout out to 211. They, I recently learned of them through a friend and went on their website, and they have a host of resources. And you can, like you're saying, you can call with any problem. So parking, or there's even an example on their website where the guy is like, hey, I'm getting ready to move, but I don't have resources for movers. And they collect all the information that they need. And then it's like this network that they dive into. And then they're also very curious, it seems like, well, is there anything else that you are seeking or lacking or need? And they're willing to help, in all ranges of need with folks. I'm curious with your clients that see you as it relates to body image and liberation. You mentioned the term acceptance, right? And I know when we previously talked, I was also curious about how you do guide your clients to acceptance of their body, but then also extending that self-compassion and forgiveness. What does that look like for you in practice?
I think and everyone hates this answer, but I think it depends and it varies. But when a client comes in, one of the biggest things I'm trying to figure out is essentially what is health for them. Because also automatically assuming they want to love their body, right? Like, there's this extreme side to health, to Hayes, health at every size. This concept that involves part of that body liberation in many ways. That for me started from Black and brown folks and sex workers, like Hayes, like the health at every size. But the passion and the forgiveness that can come from it, it's going to be its own journey. And I can't assume that's where everybody wants to go, right? And sometimes at the end of the day, I may get a client who's like, okay, I feel like I've accepted my body, and yet I still want to lose weight because that feels right? And it's like, okay, at that point, would I be like, okay, I'm not going to see you then because my beliefs are no weight loss? I would have to assess the situation and be like, maybe this is where we do harm reduction in my eyes, because I'm like, okay, this is part of your progress, and maybe that's what you need to do, and that's fine. I can be here for you and ensure that you do it in a safe way, right? And I think body acceptance may not be the goal, or may not be the place I will get to them. They might have to go to somebody else first, right? Like, that might be it. A lot of times, with most, I would say 100% of my clients, but for statistics, I'll just say maybe 99 point something. They're working with a therapist. They're working with like a spiritual or health coach. They're working with a whole team, and we're working together to figure out. And when they come to me, again, I'm trying to figure out what is health to them, and do they even value it? Because if they don't, then why am I trying to lower their cholesterol if they don't care, right? Like, we're so in a society that's so binary that we assume just like male or female, black and white, like we have to have the correct way. It has to be done. Who says that? Like, when we think of actual queer, non-binary folks, like, that's a nice example of acknowledging gender expression. Health is also like that. Health doesn't have to be like that. So when we think of self-compassion and liberate, like just forgiveness to ourselves, a lot of times it's me just reminding folks like, well, you could value health and not these one parts of health. You can still value health. And once they recognize like, oh my God, I've been putting so much pressure on my physical and mental health, when really because I put so much pressure on this, I never really put much focus on the other parts of health, which is like social, spiritual, right? Environmental health. And some folks might be listening to us and be like, what is that? Well, once we realize that, then we can realize, well, now that we know the definition of health, we can explore what is healthy to you. And now let's connect, is healthy and that connection anywhere close to your body? Like, is there a connection there? And that alone might then bring some self-compassion to acknowledge this is not just me. And I think the example I gave at our talk when we first met is like a car, right? Like, if the car doesn't work and you take it to a car dealer or a mechanic and the mechanic doesn't fix it, maybe you'll give that mechanic another try. And I'm sure a lot of people listening might be like, no, I wouldn't, but you might. And then if they don't fix it, you're not going to be like the fifth time, like, it's my fault the car's not working. No, you're going to blame the mechanic. And yet we do that to our body. And so once we can just acknowledge, like, oh, shit, I just need a new doctor. Or, oh, shit, it's not even the doctor. I just never realized, I don't know, my PCOS. Like, I don't really know what that means. Like, I had to find out from my dietitian, okay, let's get you somebody who's an endocrinologist. Let's get you an OB. Let's start from there. And now let's figure out if maybe you can give yourself. Like, sometimes it is just giving that awareness, the education, that connection. But really, sometimes it's also me just giving them the space to be like, I've never had the space. Yeah. And that's the problem with a lot of my clients who are marginalized, who do have some sort of marginalized identity. They didn't have the space to speak. And I think that's why when you told me what you did, I was like, oh, this is so exciting because you're literally providing a space for people to speak, right? So my thoughts are like, I'm sure you're going to have someone sitting right here one day who's going to be like, oh, shit, it's not my fault. Like, I need to be more self-compassionate, right? So I think self-compassion, all of that, forgiveness comes in different routes and everyone plays a role in it.
And I know for me personally, one of the strategies that I use, because sometimes, in complete transparency, I can look in the mirror and immediately critique myself in a negative way, right? But now, because I am practicing acceptance more for myself and self-compassion, I can catch myself, and it's a practice. I like to say it's like a tennis ball. You're hitting it back and forth. And when I look in the mirror, I just pause and I take a deep breath. And number one, I tell myself that I love you. Like, I love you and you are beautiful. And I'll take an intentional moment to actually touch myself, whether it's my hand to my heart, or maybe I'm looking in the bathroom mirror up close and I'll like literally touch my face. Like, you're a beautiful girl. And then I also go into curiosity as it relates to, okay, why am I still having that initial reaction when I look into the mirror of critique or what have you? So I don't judge myself anymore with it. I get curious with it. And I'm like, where is that rooted from? Where has that unearthed from? And then I just sit with that. Don't have to necessarily do anything with it, but just sit with it. And I found that practice for me has really allowed myself to connect with myself and extend more of a level of acceptance and that compassion. Another thing for me personally, as it relates to body image, my height, I'm 5'9" flat. If I put on heels, I'm easily 5'11". Yeah. How tall are you?
I'm 5'2".
5'2". Yeah, I think you're like my mom's height, somewhere around there. And my dad is like 6'3". So I kind of fell right in the average there. So just being more acceptance, especially even when I'm around my friend group or when I'm out in public, because I tend to be the tallest one out of the bunch. And also, I always in the past had a habit of just immediately getting in the back of a group picture because I was tall. And I was like, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. Now, I have some short friends, right? And so I'm not going to block them. Like, okay, you can get here in the front for sure. Yeah. But maybe I move up a little bit and center to the right or the left. But I have so many pictures where I'm literally in the back and all you can see is like my little head. And I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore, So those are just some simple ways that I practice acceptance and compassion and just not necessarily questioning, but just exploring why I do some of the things I do and what different choice can I make to uplift myself in that regard. So
Yeah.
just wanted to share that.
No, I love that. And like, honestly, thank you for sharing that because that's some truth. Like, it is truth. And it's funny because as a side note, you talk about height, where I'm like, one time I told someone, yeah, I'm a queer, and I put short in there, and someone's like, short. Like, I'm like, no, talk to anyone who's super tall, talk to anyone who's super short. They're going to tell you, like, do you know how many times I walked into a room, they're like, thought you were going to be taller. Why? You just had so much like presence and your leadership. I'm like, so someone who's a leader should be tall? How dare you? But then like the vice versa, like, oh my God, I don't know, you're so tall. Like, I've had tall friends be like, everyone thinks I'm scary, but I'm actually like the most kind of like, is it because I'm tall? So you bring that part up that I love. And you're right. I think you touch about giving space to that feeling. And a lot of times, a lot of my clients, I'm like, yes, this is why I refer them to sometimes a therapist, because sometimes even saying, I am beautiful, or I love myself, right? Even that word love, like, let's be honest, like that, that's a word that we don't sometimes say enough to each other, right? And so to know that I can't even say it to, a family member, how am I supposed to say it to myself if I never heard it, right? So for some of my clients too, it's like, if we've never seen it, we don't even know what that would feel like, and saying it that's like, we're not even there yet to do that, right? So like sometimes too, I think you bring up a good point of, can I sit with that uncomfortableness? And hopefully it leads to curiosity. Hopefully it leads to something that's not shame, that's not guilt, and acknowledges like, yes, this is me.
This is me.
This is what makes me unique, and why I should live, why I should go out there, why I should go to the front of the picture, right? Or the back if you're short. Maybe that's like a dream for somebody out there. I don't know. But yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Or have a hidden stool in the back and like stay up on it. Like, I'm actually tall in this picture.
Yeah.
And I just was also thinking about what are some ways that folks can, what are some steps one can adopt to not only feel, but be more liberated in their body. And when I thought about this question just for my own self, I was like, okay, release the fear of judgment, because that's very real.
Mm-hmm.
People show up a lot, or they don't show up in their true, authentic self because of fear of judgment and projection. Also, the element of expectations and the expectations of others. And really for that, I'm like, do for yourself, like anything that you do as it relates to your style, your essence, the way you want to communicate, like do it for you, not for others. And I know you talked a bit about that even in your work group, like as a professional, there's this perception of how you should look, right? And you're like, well, my style isn't like that. I'm going to show up authentically in that space. And I think that also requires one to continue be open to learning about themselves. Like I feel like you get more confident in acceptance and being true to yourself when you know thyself, right? Are there any other steps that you could share as it relates to how one can be and feel more liberated in their body?
Yeah, I think you touched on really good ones. And I will say some of the first things that popped in my mind and say right away, just because I'm thinking of someone I saw recently, and it was just as simple as saying, oh, have you ever tried this one bra? Right? Because for a lot of my trans, non-binary folks, it's just like I can't find the right clothes. It's like I just don't know where to go. And I'm like, have you heard of this one brand? Like, have you checked out how much the pants are? And I'm like, actually, no, I haven't. Let me go online really quick. I'm like, shit, that's how much it is for a pair of pants? Yeah, you think I can afford that? Like, by the time I can express myself, I'm going to have to be like, 40. And I'm like, good point. Okay, we need to think of something here, right? And so finding those, like, those resources. In Chicago, there's a group called FAP, Friends of Chicago. And as a disclosure, I am on the board, but, like, it's a huge community where people are just like, where do I go for this? Where do I go? And it allows them to just express. And so sometimes body liberation is just having the accessibility to be able to have that expression, right? And to acknowledge, like, you can have more than one, right? Like, sometimes I do dress like this, but you will see me in different kind of avenues where I've had people say, like, what is your style exactly? Like, sometimes you're coming in here very looking, and I'm like this, and now like this. I'm like, oh, I don't know, that's Andrea style, I guess. Like, that's what I would say. I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's just what I feel, right? And then I grew up with a mom who studied fashion and would be like, this, do this, right? So I do think, you know, you should wear it, right? The fabric shouldn't wear you, that kind of saying.
That part.
But the other part that I'm thinking of too, as soon as you said that, and so I'm just telling you what's on top of my head, what my brain's coming out and saying is, a lot of folks come to me because the reason they're also not connected, they're like, yes, I'm working with a therapist or I'm working with this coach who's really helping me liberate myself, find that space, like feel these feelings, kind of connect these thoughts, use these affirmations. I'm like, you know, I got the advice of put Scotch tape all over my mirror and just look at your beautiful eyes for now. Like, right? Like, let's start there. All these techniques. But the reason they're coming to me is like, I do want to work on that. But right now I'm feeling these GI symptoms. Like, I'm not pooping. And if, like, I always make a joke about, like, yeah, that's how you know, right? Like, when you're getting older, like, oh, that was the best shit ever. Like, yeah, okay. Maybe there's some GI issues here that we're not looking at. So let's sit down and talk about these. But before we do that to do, like, okay, well, I'm here. Tell me what to do. You're the dietitian. Tell me what I should eat. I'll do it. I'll buy it. I already raised money. I invested. Like, I got this. And I'm like, whoa, okay, wait. If we want to be liberated, let's take a few steps back before I tell you what to eat. Tell me, do you know when you're hungry? Like, how do you know when you're hungry? And like, to anyone who listens to this, like, seriously, how do you know when you're hungry? And if your response is, oh, like, you know, my stomach growls and, you know, it kind of feels empty, you know that feeling? And I'm like, okay, no, I don't know. Explain it to me. Like, stop it. I'm like, I'm being serious. How do you know you're hungry? Because for a lot of folks, just like me, what I shared earlier, a Latina in the media was seen as this like sex symbol, as this thing that needs to be this way, not someone who's smart, right? And that's why sometimes I don't actually call myself a fat provider, because in the Black and brown community, sometimes a certain type of body is a good type of body, and that's actually not seen as fat, right? So there's these, just like that, right? When we know that the media also told us that hungry is like, stomach is going. These are things that are happening. So you have to take a step back and be like, well, what are my pre-cues, right? Like, I know you have a son, right? And I don't really know him. I only saw him once, right? And I know he had Chipotle today. That's all I know about him, right? And he, and I didn't even know where Chipotle was. I was like, shit, I've been here for 2 years. Where's the Chipotle? And when he was a baby, I'm sure, like, you knew when he was hungry, right? Doesn't matter if it's breast milk, formula, whatever. Like, you learn your baby's hunger cues. And if you're a new mom, the hospital might tell you, okay, like, you're a new parent, like, just feed the baby every 2-3 hours. But as we get older, those hunger cues change. So as of now, right, I haven't met a man who's 40 years old or a woman who's like 25 where, you know, she puts her hand in her mouth and I'm like, oh, he's hungry. Like, I think he's hungry, y'all. Like, hey, are you hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry, right? Or a girl that's like moving her head all over the place and crying, and it's like, are you hungry? Maybe, right? Maybe she was freaked out, had a long day. Maybe we did get to that point. I'm sure someone listening here would be like, yes, I actually did cry. I was crying all night, and then my partner gave me food, and I felt better. I'm like, girl, you got into the late hunger cues. So maybe a form of liberation right now, like, let's not think of the future. Let's just be in the present. Even if you can't look yourself in the mirror today and do the things that you're working on about, I'm beautiful, whatever it is that you're working on, can you at least try to connect and acknowledge what that hunger cue is? Because when you got to pee, you don't ignore it. Now, to all my ADHD folks, we know the feeling of like, I got to pee, but I really want to do this. And I'm right. Moment.
Yes.
But you don't ignore those cues. You wouldn't ignore the idea of having to poop. And yet we ignore our hunger cues all the time as adults. And sometimes we ignore them because we just don't know them. And the thing about hunger cues is they do change. And for women, like, yeah, when we turn 30, our estrogen drops, a lot of things are changing. When we hit menopause, it's going to change again. And so what does that mean? It means that I'm relearning who I am, who my body is. Just like I'm growing and just like I'm experiencing, my body is too.
So I'm curious, and in short, what are examples of some hunger cues?
Yeah. Sometimes it's not being able to focus, right? For some, it's like, oh, this girl talked for too long and I lost track. I got to rewind this video and like hear it again, right? It could be just the idea of not being able to sit still for some. It could be noticing you are yawning, your moods are fluctuating. Maybe it's not a physical thing, it's more of an emotional thing.
So hangry is a real thing?
Hangry is a real thing, right? But you maybe before you got hangry, you were a little anxious. Like, yeah, I notice every time I get anxious, well, when's the last time you ate? Okay, maybe you need to eat, but I don't feel hungry. Okay, but let's just see. Like, just take a bite of something. How did you feel after? And are you able to know what you're feeling? And then if you can, we can talk about it with someone. That's cool. But those could be some examples. Back pain can happen. People get headaches, right?
Yeah,
like that could be it. Nausea. Sure. You get tired. You recognize maybe you get overstimulated quicker. Like, I don't know what it is, but this temperature here is like, this is not the vibe. This is not feeling good. You weren't like this like an hour ago.
What shifted?
Like what shifted? Like literally nothing changed here. Well, yeah, I haven't eaten in like 3 hours. Oh, that's probably it. You're probably hungry. Let's eat something and see if it helps.
That's
right.
Good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, in conclusion here, I have a little bit of some rapid fires here. I like to call them heart highlights, but
okay.
I think rapid fire might be sticking here. And I'm going to consider this more of the Cleveland edition since you're new here, okay?
Oh, God.
What's your favorite Cleveland restaurant?
Oh, LBM.
Oh, where is that? LBM.
Oh, now you're testing me on the streets. No. You not even in Chicago. You could trust. I don't even know the streets.
Okay, I'll Google
but
it.
But LBM's so good. Best cocktail. Best margarita. They also work a lot. Their food is on point. They have happy hour like all day when there's like games. You know, like yesterday we had the game. We lost, but you know.
Got tonight though.
Yeah, we have
Guardians. What is your go-to spot for weekend or outdoor activity?
Outdoor Metro Parks. I'm telling you, I love the Metro Parks.
Do you have a favorite Metro Park?
Well, just the one out here, but okay, would be because it's so close.
We'll have to connect. Well, when the weather breaks, I got another spot for you.
Indoor. Honestly, the indoor, like I'm just like let go, but that's a coffee shop that I'm like, why am I seeing that? Oh, you know why? Because they hosted Story Wars. If anyone knows about the story, like they did it's a whole thing. They do events there sometimes, and it's so chill. It's a nice environment. It's a good place to work. It's a good like actually work there is like right now. Well, maybe hiring too if they're hiring. I don't know, but that's also a great place.
What's one word to describe Cleveland's vibe?
The vibe. I feel like Cleveland's real.
Yeah,
I would use the word real because you know what? At the end of the day, someone will tell you the truth. Like even the first day I came here, lady in the hotel right away tells me like, let me tell you where to go. And then right away said like, this one girl just looked at me and went down. And I just was like, what is that? But said it to myself. And she goes, I know, right? She's such a bitch. Why is she doing? You want me to go over there and talk to her? I was like, no. Thank you, though. And she was just so kind, right? But also real. Like it was authentic.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And you in partnership with, and the name is slipping me, but you'll share it, have a holiday community support. Can you share a little bit more about that workshop that you have coming up?
So it's a Nourish collective, Nourish Whole collective with Laura. She's a health coach out and she does so many things, to be honest, but in Texas. Every year I do work with someone else. Here in Cleveland, I work with Out Fitness, Josh, a lot. So if anyone's familiar with that gym, and if you're not, look it up. It's really great. I really, really admire the work that he does. But the holiday support group that I'm doing with Laura, it's the next one is on November 10th, and it goes all the way to January. And it's really just a space to kind of talk about the stuff we talked about today. Not like a class. It's really just an open space. Sometimes we need that support. Like, to be honest, like, let's think about it. Setting boundaries, sometimes it's hard.
Yes.
Just finding self-care, recognizing food is hard, especially now. Like, it was hard to eat when I was living alone. It's even harder now that I need to go visit so-and-so for the holidays. Like, right? So sometimes we just need that space. And with people that we could just be open and say like, hey, not sure, but I know this resonates to me. So we're hosting them. They're virtual. There's 6 of them, and we're hoping to do more. The collective itself, I know you can join. It's a smaller place. It's all intentional. Like, it's all meant to be a place where you use it when you need it, not the whole like, oh my God, I'm just posting to post because it's right. Like, if we're posting something, it's really just a space to say like, hey, I heard something today and I want to share with everyone here. Or here's a class you'll get. So regardless if you do just the workshop or that, it's a nice place. But
Fabulous.
I hope to do more and more stuff here in Cleveland. And the next things I'll be doing is more food demos with the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. So
Wonderful. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Well, thank you so much for being here again and saying yes. You've dropped some amazing gems here today. And that's going to be it. We're wrapping up here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Maven Podcast. Until next time. I want to take a moment to thank the incredible sponsors who made today's episode of the Maven Podcast possible. Your support not only fuels these conversations, but also helps us spread the wisdom, healing, and inspiration to our growing community. For your commitment to our mission and for believing in the power of transformative dialogue, we couldn't do this without you. So here's a special thanks to Thaddeus Sumbry of Dimitri's Barbershop, Lakeisha Beasley of Relaxation Loft, and Ray of Beauty Apparel and Shapewear. Deshella Woodruff, Realtor and Investor of Cleveland, Ohio. Danielle Graham of Rooted Blossoms, DeAndre Washington of Higher Shelf Tarot, and Zoe Brown and Iris Gonzalez of Island Beats Cleveland. If you're interested in learning more about our sponsors and their amazing work, check out the links in the show notes. And thank you for supporting those who support us.